I don't sleep soundly, I sleep strangely. Ever since I was a child, my nights have been populated by monsters, aliens, and the shadow of another me who acted without my knowledge. When I was young, I used to sleepwalk around the house or refused to go to bed at all for fear of the nightmares that tormented me. Then, as a teenager, my sleep suddenly descended into a much more peculiar realm. Since then, I regularly wake up in the middle of the night in pure terror, having experienced a ghostly assault. Nightmares, night terrors, lucid dreams, sleep paralysis, somnambulism, and hypnopompic hallucinations are some of the phenomena known as parasomnias. Even the name evokes images of ghosts and monsters, crumbling towers and overgrown graveyards. These strange states of sleep have a profound and timeless effect on our imagination, shaping art, literature, and scientific investigations, and provoking paranoia of witches and, more recently, extraterrestrial encounters. Parasomnias, even in their most bizarre and frightening forms, are more common than we might think. Recent surveys estimate that around 70% of the population will experience a parasomnia at least once in their life, with the most common forms being sleep-talking and nightmares. The problem, however, is that a combination of not remembering what we've done in our sleep and fearing the stigma of admitting to hallucinations, violent behaviour or erotic dreams may mean that survey results are much lower than the real prevalence. When I talk to others about my sleep, I find that sometimes people will confess that they've experienced something similar. They just didn't know it was a thing. In this book, we will investigate tales of sleep disorders through history, not only to see parasomnias mythologized and fictionalized, but in order to help us to talk and to listen to stories about our own troubled sleep. I've always had the propensity to experience parasomnias, but it was only when I was a teenager that they took on new forms and a new significance. Since then, the occasional sleepwalk or bad dream has developed into something a lot more sinister. When I was 15, a new teacher started at my secondary school. She was young, fresh out of university, and full of enthusiasm and bright ideas. But she took an immediate unhealthy interest in me that slowly festered into something manipulative and claustrophobic, and now she haunts my sleep. I only knew her for 3 years, but it took me a lot longer to shake off the anxiety and mistrust her behaviour caused. It was nothing scandalous or explicit, but it has done lasting damage. As far as I know, she was never questioned by other staff in the school. I don't blame any of the other adults around me at the time. In the beginning, even I didn't think things were problematic. But I suppose it was that sheltered naivety that made me a prime target in the first place. Nevertheless, I eventually began a slow and painful process of recovery, and while mostly I don't think about her at all during the day, in my sleep she continues to terrify me. She is the unseen figure chasing me in dreams, the shadow that floats in the corner of my room, and the vivid, firm hand that grasps my neck when I'm paralysed. In this book, I call her Meredith, after mare, the old term for sleep paralysis. It seems fitting. It was my last year at that school, after which I went elsewhere to do my A-levels. At that age, I was getting restless. I wanted to move on to bigger challenges. There were some subjects that I found particularly frustrating. English was one of them. I knew that there was so much to read and learn, but we were spending term after term picking apart the adjectives and nouns in a fake county council planning application. Some teachers took pity, slipping me old copies of The Guardian or recommending books and films. When Meredith arrived and quickly started doing the same, I didn't think anything of it. But I now see the difference. The culture section of a crumpled newspaper had no strings attached, but Meredith's offerings were a tangled web of secret messages and the promise of a long, uncomfortable conversation after school. I unfortunately had English as my last lesson twice a week, and she knew that I had a 10-minute window before the bus left without me. Once I missed the bus, I'd have to wait an hour for my parents to finish work and come to collect me. Maybe it was a coincidence, but fairly early in the term she rearranged the tables and assigned me the furthest seat from the exit. With me at the back of the queue to leave the room, she could lean across.